Welcome to Bluegrass Brooklyn, our podcast all about the music we love, straight from the Bluegrass borough of Brooklyn, New York.
No hell, ain't no worlds beyond here, as far as we can tell. We are alone on this planet where we dwell, so we pray to the planet for all that we need, and we promise.
Hello, and welcome to this Monday edition of the Bluegrass Brooklyn podcast. I'm your host, Liz Wolfe, and in these editions, we explore topics that are related to and supporting our favorite music, bluegrass. Enjoy the show.
We are the masters of our lives, but we're a species that transgresses and connives. That's why we pray that you're...
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Bluegrass Brooklyn. Today's guest is somebody you may or may not know. You know certainly about some things he has done, that is for sure. His name is Greg Kotis, and he is how would you describe yourself, Greg?
I'm a theater guy, I think, principally. I'm a playwright, composer, lyricist, performer, but really a playwright and a librettist, someone who writes, and lyricist, someone who writes musicals and plays.
Okay, and plays the banjo, and that's a very important thing.
Yes. It's critical,
and that is how I met Greg. So serendipitously, around the time of the pandemic, it was a bit after the pandemic, and I remember that because you have a very heavy beard at that time,
yes.
As many people did coming out of the pandemic. And I went to see a show of an old friend of mine whose daughter was doing a show at Don't Tell Mamas. And afterwards she said, "Oh, you're doing bluegrass jams. You should come to my house and do a bluegrass jam." And so I went to her house to do a bluegrass jam with like 6 people. And you were there.
Yes.
You were friends with her. So they are both high-level musicians. Their whole family is. And you were there and we got to know each other and you were playing the banjo. And I think that was the start of that for you, right?
Yeah. I mean, Renee, I think she's a great musician. And she was part of a homeschool community that we became a part of. Our younger kid, who's now an adult, we homeschooled him through his high school and some of his middle school years. And so Renee was part of that community of homeschoolers. And one of the things, like part of the culture of homeschool, is just a lot of do-it-yourself events, one of which is a soiree that Renee would host, bringing musicians together just to jam and have fun. So we first met, and I was early in my banjo journey, and that was maybe one of the first times where I ventured out of my room, which is I'm in now, and dared to perhaps play in the presence of other musicians, and just to see what that was like. So that was a big event in my own banjo journey.
So I did not know when I met you that you were any of those theater guy stuff. And so, in fact, it was just a couple of years later that I found out that you wrote Urinetown.
It's true. Yes. I started doing theater in Chicago in the late 80s, early 90s, and then moved to New York in 1995 and started collaborating with Mark Holman, who was a theater collaborator from Chicago days. And Urinetown was the show that we worked together on from the mid-1990s until 1999, when it premiered at the New York International Fringe Festival. And then it was picked up by commercial producers who then brought it to Off-Broadway and Broadway. And so now we are 24 years into the professional career of this show called Urinetown, which has been done thousands of times around the country and around the world. And it has been a very unlikely journey for off Broadway in spirit show that found a huge life.
So, I'm a terrible celebrity spotter, and I don't know if you think of yourself as a celebrity, but I just cracks me up that there we were just playing bluegrass together, and you did start to come to some jams. And so it has been fun getting to know you through the bluegrass world. and not knowing at any time that you wrote You're in Town. I have never actually seen You're in Town, but now I would have a reason to go see it if,
Yeah.
if it came around again,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I'm very proud of it. It's a great show.
But there's other stuff that you're doing. You are actually doing other shows, one of which was called The End of All Flesh, which I did get to see. But that had some familiar figures in it. It was yourself playing the banjo as Pa.
Yep.
And then I know, well, why don't you tell us about the other
Sure.
folks that we probably know them.
The characters are Ma, Pa, Boy, and Girl. 4 people, 4 characters. So I played Pa, and my wife Anne played Ma, who's sort of the center of the show. SAMMY PIGNALOSA played Boy, and MAITHILI GINDE played Girl. And we had a fantastic score that was arranged. Bluegrass arrangements were created by Melody ALLEGRA, who also played fiddle on stage with the band. And she was accompanied also with Stephen Elkins on guitar and Marty Eisenberg on bass. The show is about the last humans on Earth sometime in America's distant future. And it's a kind of retelling of the Noah story where we see the last people on Earth who happen to be these mountain people as they fight amongst each other and drama happens, and it's a comedy. But it's a post-apocalyptic show about mountain people who sing and they dance a little, and they try to begin the next chapter of humanity after a terrible flood of fire that has engulfed or heat that has engulfed the world. My own story with Bluegrass, because Bluegrass was just a genre that I kind of knew about, and it was like, oh, is it kind of like country, maybe a little bit like folk? I didn't really know. And then one Christmas, my wife Anne, she bought me a banjo because she said that I had mentioned, oh, it would be cool to play banjo. And I don't even remember saying this. And it sat in a corner for a year because I tried to play it. I play a little guitar. So I tried to play this banjo, and I learned pretty quickly, like, oh, this is totally different. I can't do this. It's too hard. So it basically sat in a corner for a year. And the next Christmas, Anne bought me a subscription to Artist Works, which is this great outfit that you can learn instruments and singing and music, all things kind of music, and it's bluegrass centric online. And as terrible as the shutdown and COVID was, the one silver lining for me was I was sequestered long enough to get over my initial challenges of trying to understand how to make this instrument do things. So I just spent a lot of lockdown just in a room trying to learn how to make my 2 hands do things independently and memorize plucking and develop a process where I could learn how to play. So that was 2021. And so 4 or 5 years later, still doing it. And also, just to talk about The End of All Flesh, I let my beard grow. So I had like this big Marxian beard.
Yes, you did.
And I had long hair down down to the middle of my back, which I'd never done before. And I found myself at one point with this huge mountain man look and the beginnings of banjo ability. And I thought, what do I do with this as a theater person? So that's where the idea for The End of All Flesh came. It was like, oh, I could play a mountain man who plays banjo. I'll just write a part for myself, and I'll write a part for Anne, who's a brilliant comic performer. I'll just write a show for us to do for fun. So that's sort of where that show emerged out of. And then all my preoccupations with things like, environmental collapse and succession dramas and all the political science stuff that you might have seen in the show, or you might remember from the show. So anyway, that was where that came from.
Actually, for me, that's when Ron and I started organizing jams in New York City. It came out of the pandemic because all of the jams shut down. And we started organizing them outside. And now I've got this whole Jampire and a podcast too.
Jampire, I love that.
So you're coming out now with what would you call it, album?
Yeah, cast recording album. We went into a recording studio in Brooklyn called The Creamery, and it's a very sort of rock and roll, it's a rock and roll kind of grungy, fantastic space in Greenpoint to record the songs. So the cast and the musicians went into this studio and we recorded all the songs. And we hope to have that album for release by the end of the year. And
That's
and I think it'll be available on Bandcamp, and then you can listen, hopefully, if everything goes well, you'll be able to hear it on Spotify and Apple Music and all the places that you listen to music on.
And that is well worth preserving. So I think it's really great that you went ahead and did that, because it was really some cool music.
Oh,
The whole
thanks.
play was cool. And you have another production coming up December 21st,
Yes.
The Wayfaring Strangers.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Sure. So Anne and I, as this is also a production of our theater company, the Theater of the Apes, which also did The End of All Flesh, we do once a month a fully improvised bluegrass musical that we do currently at the Pit, the People's Improv Theater in Chelsea in New York City. And so we get a suggestion and then we make up a show. And everyone plays their own instruments. And it's always a hoot. And it's a cheap date. I think it's like $10.
Okay.
So it's really fun. And, our slot is an hour. We usually have a warm-up group. And then we do our set. And the musicians are great. And the evening is really fun. The name of the show is The Wayfaring Strangers. And we perform at the People's Improv Theater, also known as the Pit, on West 29th Street between 6th and 7th Avenue. I don't know what the exact address is, but if you Google The Pit, you can find it. Or if you go to my website, I'll have the show mentioned there.
Which is gregkotis.com and or theater-of-the-apes.com for that. And
That's it.
the last time I went to your website, there was a picture of you with your enormous mane of
Yes.
beard and hair. So
Yes.
it's worth going to see that
Yeah.
no matter what. So bluegrass has really had some impact in your theater world since
Absolutely.
learning banjo.
Yep.
Would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how much I loved this music until I started trying to learn how to play it. My focus is really like these old standards like Bury Me Beneath the Willow and Sitting on Top of the World and Wayfaring Stranger and all these great old-timey tunes, which are just fantastic. And the music is always tuneful and fun. I mean, the thing that I found, the parallels between the values of the musical theater world and the values that I think I'm seeing in the bluegrass world in terms of the construction of these songs is the songs are really narrative. They tell a story, which I think is great. And the lyrics keep to these principles of craft that are very important in musical theater lyric writing. Things like true rhymes, where the words have to rhyme and that they match true speech so that, they're never kind of fudging how you pronounce a word in order to make it convenient for whatever the stresses of the music. So I'm just seeing like whoever wrote these songs, because a lot of them are like, they're unattributed. They're like back before perhaps notions of copyright.
Right. Made famous by the Carter family, let's say, but he collected the songs, so he didn't write the songs.
Right. I study lyrics a little bit in order to better understand how to do them. And if you look at the lyrics of these classic bluegrass songs, they are deceptively simple. Like it takes some work to make something so simple and so easy to sing. And so I'm an admirer of whoever wrote these lyrics because they are very easy to sing. And that's a hard thing to do if you are actually trying to craft lyrics. It takes some work.
And so you have the Wayfaring Strangers going on. Are you also working on another bluegrass show or any other show?
Actually, yes, I am. I'm working on a musical adaptation of Two Gentlemen of Verona with Aaron Posner. Aaron Posner is a great director and playwright. And he came to see The End of All Flesh and he said, "Oh, I really like what you've done." and I'd like to have some songs written for Two Gentlemen of Verona, which is a Shakespeare comedy. I think it might be an early Shakespeare comedy, where this kind of music and this kind of sensibility is sort of infused into the show. So it's not a musical exactly, it's more a play with music, which is kind of, the difference between those two is a little, it's a little loose, but it's just fewer songs, and it's more about feeling rather than the music and the lyrics driving the action. So that's something that's going to be, it'll get a student production at American University in, I think, March. And then it will have a production at a place called American Players Theater in Wisconsin. And then maybe it might have life after that too, hopefully. But yeah,
Broadway, perhaps.
You never know. Every show is a very labor-intensive lottery ticket, and sometimes these shows, they make their way somehow.
Yeah. Well, with banjo in hand, you can never go wrong, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a joy machine. Like whenever the banjo comes out, people get really excited. I take the subway to rehearsals for the Wayfaring Strangers, and usually someone will say, "Hey, is that a banjo?" And then they'll tell me something about their connection to either the banjo or bluegrass. So it's a really fun way to connect with people. And it's just this absolutely distinctive American instrument that people are excited about.
Yeah.
So it's fun to have this connection.
Well, more great things coming from Greg Kotis. Looking forward to seeing the Wayfaring Strangers and listening to The End of All Flesh. I really appreciated having you on as a guest. Thank you so much for meeting up with me, and hopefully we'll see you around the jam circle soon.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to talk to you.
Abandon us, dear Mother Earth, though we often may have persecuted you.
Thank you so much for listening. Again, my name is Liz Wolfe. Please subscribe to our podcast and follow us on our social media so you never miss an episode. You can find us online at bluegrassbrooklyn.com. Brooklyn is spelled BKLYN. See you around the jam circle.
My love is like a river flowing down the mountainside, whose raging waters will deliver you to me so I can be your bride.
My love is like a salmon swimming in that river gloom, who has no cause to re-examine why I shouldn't soon become your groom.